That. So we're going to talk about Chromakey today. And this is a clip from Stargate Studios. This is a special effects house out in the west, a little further in the West Coast than Lost Wages. And you probably will recognize some of the movies here that they have done special effects for. And what you're seeing is what the composited shot might look like and how they put it together and so on. And while probably nobody in the audience here is doing special effects movies with multi-million-dollar budgets, you're probably, most of you probably at least have done or are doing Chromakey, green screen, blue screen work in some case, and they're doing the exact same thing here that we do in our studios. If anybody standing there wants to sit down, there's chairs here, don't be embarrassed, come sit down, take a load off, and enjoy the talk. What the heck, you might hear a joke you haven't heard before, though I'm not sure about that. But this is what they do the same thing you do. Maybe they do it a little differently than you do, but this is what they're talking about. And it's really quite simple. All we're going to do in this process is take a color off the screen that we shoot and put other information where that color used to be. It's that simple. And you go back to the earliest days of motion picture, and where they didn't have color, but they did a luminance key. Where things were black, they put other things back. And so this is a technique that's been around. We just do it a little differently today than we did a few years ago. I'm not old enough to know how they did it, I just have read about it. It wasn't there with Thomas Edison doing that work. So we're talking about Chromakey, you can talk about green screen, you can talk about blue screen. This is all the same thing. Have a color on the set, remove that color somehow in some process, and put other information where that color used to be. It's all the same, whatever you call it. But I'd like to talk about color first, because we're talking about Chromakey, color key. So, if you're lucky enough, like I did, you had a 7th grade science teacher, Miss Marble, who took the prism, put it on the windowsill. Did you do this, or at least maybe you've seen pictures of this, and if you haven't, it's fun to do. And the prism splits the spectrum, the visible spectrum, up into the colors of the rainbow, which is all the raindrops are doing. They're showing you all the different wavelengths available in the sunlight, which is the sunlight is the perfect light source because it has everything. It's all the light energy that we can see, and all the energy that we can't see is present in that. And that's all the rain is doing when you see a rainbow, is acting like a prism and breaking up. You're seeing certain frequencies split up that way. Well, that was my first introduction to color and light that made any kind of sense to me. I can't blame her for getting involved in lighting because she was a pain in the something or other, but I remember that demonstration to this day. Well, you've got all these colors available in the rainbow, and what we're trying to do is get rid of part of the rainbow but leaving the rest of it intact. So what we're looking for is the least amount of color that we want to remove from the picture. How many times have you watched a special effect, or especially on local news, and see the weather person at the Chromakey board, and then you see him sitting down at the desk, and on the Chromakey board they look like heck. And they look so much better when they sit at the desk. You go, what's the matter with the camera or the Chromakey? And it's usually not the camera. It's usually that the color wasn't right on the Chromakey board to the camera, the way it appeared to the camera. And they had to grab more and more color, grab that, remove it from the picture, so they could hold the key. And if you think about it, most of you are doing green screen, mostly green Chromakey, because that green's not a color that's normally found in a wardrobe. That allows us to wear blue shirts, blue suits, and so on and so forth without any problem. But green is one of the 2 primary colors that make all the flesh tones. And I don't care whether you're African American, Caucasian, Asian, or Hispanic, you're going to need red and green light on your face for faithful skin reproduction. So we start removing too much green from the picture. That's why the weather person looks lousy at the Chromakey screen and better at the anchor desk. So how do we make that not a problem? Well, what we're trying to do is get something that's highly saturated, really, really blue, really, really green, single valued. So in other words, it's a really pure color, highly saturated, single valued hue. And Tom, he's here from Roscoe, Canada, and it was Stan Miller who gave me, I was trying to, what's the best way I can say what we're trying to do? And Stan said, John, just tell him it's a highly saturated, single valued hue, which kind of makes sense. Or if you want to think of it another way, remove the fewest teeth from the comb. If all the colors of the spectrum were a comb, we want to take one tooth out. Now don't laugh, because you and I have the same hairdo, but we do know, we remember what a comb is, don't we? So that's Charles. Thank you for having a good sense of humor about this, Charles. I do. What the heck, you know? I've got no choice. I think at the Win yesterday, you lost some of George and Harry, but so few I name them now. But that's what we're trying to do. We want to have a single, highly saturated value, highly saturated single value hue. We want to remove that one little bit of color, leaving the rest of the color intact so we can put other information where that color was. That's pretty simple. That's what we're doing. That's the problem. So there's really just three keys to it. And to me, it all starts with this. The surface that we're going to light, that's what the camera's seeing. Whatever light's reflecting off that surface, that's where it starts. It doesn't start with the lighting, it starts with the surface. Now, there are good companies, including Roscoe, who make a range of paints that you can use on a surface. So maybe in a plaster site, maybe you've got a wood wall in your set, and that's great. But the problem with paint is that it only mirrors the surface behind it, or underneath it, I guess would be the right way to say it. And that gives you a kind of specular reflection. The shinier that surface is, the harder that reflection. Remember, okay, back to like 7th grade geometry, angle of incidence, angle of reflection. Okay, so Tom's going to be the camera. I'm going to be the weather person. Right? If I were, you'd know why I was earning my living on the other end of the lens. But they'll just kind of play along with me. So the light that's going to light me and the Chromakey material is right above Tom. Light comes in at an angle. The harder that surface, more light is going to be reflected actually away from the camera. So if you were to look at this with your waveform monitor, get me out of the picture and look at it, what you would probably see is a bright spot about here, angle of incidence angle. That's the light that's coming back camera. There's a whole bunch of light that's reflected down there, a whole bunch of light that's reflected up here, other light going off the side. So you see a bright spot, and then you probably see other bands of brightness. If you were looking at this on your waveform monitor, what you saw obviously is some kind of a sloping or curved line that'd be very thick, showing that different amounts of brightness is in different places. And what we're trying to do is have this nice, flat, solid, relatively thin line, all very coherent from edge to edge. And that would say that the light that's reflected off is even. Which the light reflected off is even, that means it all looks like the same shade, the same hue, the same saturation of that color. The reason I like fabric, and there's gazillions of fabrics, you say, why do they need all these different fabrics to do a key? And that's because different systems need different colors. Your camera and your system that's going to do the key might find one color would do a better job than another color. And there's some of it is made for a very specific film, some of it's made for a very specific keying equipment. So you just find a piece of this. What I like of it is this gives us a nice diffuse reflection. So light hits it, it doesn't all come back at the same angle, some of it diffuses around. So this makes the transition from the brighter areas to the darker areas of reflectance more even. It's at least the transition's more gradual. So this is the first thing. If I have my choice and I have to vote, I always want to go with material. And there's a number of companies that make material that's... Don't be afraid to sit down. We've got chairs here. When I come on Wednesday, you have to be tired by now by remote. So, and I light a lot of painted walls, so it can be done. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying if I have my brothers, I got to vote, give me cloth every time. And it's available. And you want to test anything, there's not a reputable dealer or a reputable company that won't give you some size sample or samples that you can try in your own facility with your own lighting, your own camera, to see which is going to be the best material for you. And that I would urge you to do it for lots of reasons. So to me, it's the surface. That's the first thing. The correct product will get for you. The correct product for you will give you the best results. Ed, come on, sit down. Don't be bashful, for heaven's sakes. Well, the second thing is separation. To help keep the talent looking real. Let's think about what we're doing here. We have a highly saturated single value hue reflecting light back at the camera. And we only need enough light for the camera to see that color, so downstream we can get rid of that color. And the further I can get the person away from that background, it's a very narrow bandwidth of color. It's not a lot of light that's coming back because that material is absorbed probably 90, 91, 92, 93% of the light, because we're only sending a very narrow bandwidth of light back out. So the only way it looks green is it's absorbed all this other light, right? Kind of like physics 101. So if I got the guy pasted up against it, I got all this stuff bleeding around him or her. If I get him half an arm width away, it's a little better. It's falling off real quick. And if I get them as much as an arm width away, think of all the possibilities that now I've got to light them separately from the background and kill that bounce coming back at you. If, for example, though, you were doing like special effects work where you had a big studio and you didn't have to have them pasted up against it, and you could literally separate them out far enough so that you could light them separately from the background. Think of the lighting options you've got now to light them to make them look some way. But if I can light the background separately from the talent, where the lighting from the foreground doesn't hit the background, couple things. I got no green bounce or blue bounce coming back at me because I can kill that all day long without doing anything strange, number one. There's not a lot of light energy to get back here to get that, make that problem for me. But I can light that background now with only the color of light I need reflected back off of it. So if I use like a Roscoe Cal color green, Tom's here, I want to make sure we say the right brand name. Or I use like a Kina Flow narrow bandwidth tube that they make specifically. Oh, thank you, Jonathan. I can use my deep voice now. You can, if I, oh my God, Jonathan, it's so loud. You know, are you the one that needs the hearing aid? I thought I was the deaf one. So, if I have that separation, I can put my white lights, put the green gel on or a blue gel on it, and have only the color hit it that I need coming off. It's much more efficient. Or if I have like a Kina Flow narrow bandwidth tube they make specifically for this green or blue, I can reduce the light level 2 stops. I can use 25% of the light that I'm using on the tower and still get a good key. And less light, I've got less bounce coming back. Now, most of us don't have that ability, but if you can do that, it's a wonderful thing. So we'll go back to where you, Jonathan, this is way too loud. Thank you. So that any separation you can get, what did you do, Jonathan? Any separation you can get is going to be good. Just the difference between them pasted up against it, half an arm width, you get them a full arm width away, you got a lot of options, we have a lot fewer problems. So separation is a good thing. I think the last thing is the lighting has to make sense. I call it coherent lighting, just for lack of a better phrase. Or you could say keep it simple, stupid. What it is, it's pretty simple. Basically overcomplicated. It's not that complicated. So let's look at one plan that might work for you. This particular plan, this is a plan view, so you're up overhead looking down. And what we have here is a 12-foot Chromakey board. It's not exactly scale. These wouldn't be as big and as close as they are now, but I had wanted to fit it on one slide that you could actually see. So these would probably be literally 8 to 10 feet, maybe 11 or 12 feet away from the board. So here's your person. He's going to be walking back and forth here. There's your green screen. Your camera's going to be down here. Well, let's start with that row of lights in the front. This is a lighting line array. Like a line array in speakers, we have a line array of a light, probably a soft light like we have overhead, this nice fluorescent assisting soft light. Then you have a row of lights, and they're as tight together as you can get them, and still get your hand on the tilt knob. Because what you want to do is when the person's standing here, you want that not to look like 5 or 6 separate lights. You want that to appear to their face as one light source. We don't have 5 or 6 separate shadows floating around on their nose. Of course, we don't usually do them in a close-up, so it's not that critical, but let's start out as nice as possible. The reason for the soft light is that same problem we had before, where we talked about the specular reflection coming off the painted surface or off the board because of angle of incidence, angle of... I worked with an old-time, I have a very good friend, multiple national Emmy award-winning lighting director, and we were doing a master class for 3 days several years ago, and I got to do the color and Chromakey and everything, and I showed him this. Now, he had always used a very large 2K Fresnel so that he could evenly put light on the background. It's not a matter of how much light hits the background evenly, it's how much light reflects off that background evenly. So let's go back to Tom being the camera. You take that nice big old 2K straight overhead. There's light that comes to the board and comes right back to the camera, right in the center. But the light that's hitting the center, most of it is reflecting off away from the camera, down the bottom and so on. So you still have that banding problem. But the minute you put a coherent light source in the front that's soft and diffuse, you're treating that whole board all those light rays are overlapping really nicely. The worst you're going to get is a little buildup in the middle, so maybe the middle 2 lights, or middle 3 lights if you have 5 lights, might have to be less bright because that's where the buildup's going to be. But that's easy. You know how to make lights less bright. And again, your best meter is not your light meter, it may be a spot meter, but get the guy the heck out of the way, put the camera, look on the waveform monitor. That's going to tell you if it's bright. Nice, straight, solid line, you've done a good job. It's that simple. And this is probably going to do 80% of the light you need for exposure for the person here. If you're doing a shot, a Chromakey shot that doesn't have to marry with anything else, just doing a stand-up single camera for some project, how much depth of field do you need? Shoot it bloody wide open. You know, unless you really hate the town, then make it an 8. You know, have 16 times the light melt the town. But assuming that you don't, but you've got no depth of field requirements. You know, the background's going to be as sharp or as soft as you make it in whatever you put in. So the lighting's not going to make that any different. And if I'm doing a set where, like, it's a weather set and there's an anchor desk there and an interview set here, I'm going to make it the same stop as the rest of the set, which is generally 2.8 to 2.84 split, halfway between, or 3.2 if you have the digital readout on your CCU, because that's all the depth of field I need for a down-the-line shot. You know, 3-shot toss to weather, 4-shot toss to sports, or an over-the-shoulder shot in the interview set. That's plenty of depth of field. You can't hold that in focus. It must be an audio engineer. So, this is doing 80% of that work, roughly. You have to give it a number, that's a number. But what's the one thing that happens if you've done Chromakey, haven't you all noticed that you start losing black detail? All the dark details go to heck. You just lose all this. So like Wayne here has got really great hair. I'm not picking on you, Wayne. I'm complimenting you. I'd kill for that hair. But what's working here is we got all these lights bouncing up overhead. And there's these great reflections in his hair. And that, so what you're looking at here is some row of lights. They don't need to be terribly bright. But some row of lights that are large. So I have a large reflection in the hair. So I get the dark clothing, the dark hair. I get detail. Obviously, if it's me, don't need much. You need maybe a little something, maybe nothing. But it also helps you kill a little bit of that green bounce coming off the board. And you want to keep that light, these lights here, off the board. So maybe you're going to tease it with a little black wrap or a teaser just to make sure it doesn't go, because you don't want to start screwing up the top of the board and making that brighter again and making that problem with the bigger bandwidth you're pulling out. And lastly, then I'd like to, if I can, have a couple of harder lights from the side. And only hard because I don't want them to fall onto the background. If any of you, and I won't, like, have been seeing ballet, modern dance, you've gone to a dance recital, anything like that, where it's actually professionally lighted, one of the primary things they use to light the body, to articulate the body, separate the body, is when it's coming from the side, because you get an edge and you reveal the musculature of the body, and you make that motion dynamic as they're moving up and down stage, on stage, and so on. So, and that's perfect here. That's the perfect light to pop them out of the background without doing something crazy. It could be very attractive. Just 45 degrees here, 45 degrees here. Put the big doors next to the, you know, and just keep that light off us. So maybe they lose their hand when they put, you know, that's not in the light when they go up there, but you don't want to have it spill onto that. And you're fine. So it's really that simple. Now, how bright should it be? We're going to show you an example in a minute where I definitely did have a call back to the station. It's a good station, a friend of mine, about 45 minutes from my house. I go down a couple of times a year to touch up the lighting. Haven't been there for a while. The top light's a little too bright. You'll see the woman's nose is not as attractively lighted as it could be. So what I do is I get this about 80% of where I need to be from the front. I bring this up till I start to see it and back it down again. Same thing with the side. I start to see it, back it down, because you don't want the dancing nose shadows. They're going from here to here, you know. And that it doesn't sound terribly scientific, but that's really it. And you'll have, believe me, you'll have plenty of light. Just don't make it too much light. You get too much, you know how to make lights less bright. So let's take a look. This is Channel 12 in Providence, a Lynn broadcast station, and you can see on the top of your head. So, but we've got a nice, you have a nice clean key. I apologize that this isn't a color critical viewing monitor, so the contrast isn't going to show all the detail and so on, but you're starting to see how this works. And it's pretty simple. You could do this. You really could do this. No special equipment. Nothing more than we spoke about here. Pretty low technology. Well, I guess the fluorescents are high technology. And she's probably half an arm away from the board. I don't know why they persist in touching the board. You know, Cape Cod's not really there when they touch it. But, you know, guys are the worst. They have to touch things. You ever watch a guy walk through a house? They touch all the furniture when they go by. But all other people have to touch the board. I'm not sure why that is. It's make-believe. You know, it's not really Cape Cod. It's a green board, for heaven's sakes. And you can see the reflections in her hair and so on that wouldn't be there if we hadn't got those top lights and the side lights working there. Now, if you were tempted to try and jam a backlight in there just because you're used to having a backlight, now think of how high and steep that backlight angle would be. Now, that's probably a really appropriate angle if you're doing 1930s German expressionism theater, but probably not terribly attractive. And if you've done it, you probably know it's not very attractive. And do you want to have this bib shadow change? So we have the two hot head with the bib shadow changing them every time they're moving. Like, really, come on. You don't need to do that. Don't need to do that. 45 degrees off to the side, wonderful light. A little top light, great. A little flat light, as low as you can get it, so that angle of reflection, angle of incidence is working for you as opposed to against you. You're done. It's that simple. So it's really just 3 keys. The Chromakey service, it starts with that. Good lighting can't make up for that. Now, the only thing we're not addressing really today is the camera and the video system. I'm just talking about what you and I can control. I'm not an engineer. I don't play one on TV either. We got the Chromakey service. We got separation of the talent, whatever you can get, every little bit helps. And then a coherent lighting plan, lighting the separate things separately where appropriate, lighting both things together where that's appropriate. Now that I've worked in this business now, I'm embarrassed to say it's like 40 years. I did have hair when I started. There's probably a reason. It took me a long time to find out what the rules were. And the first rule is if it was easy, they wouldn't need you. And the second rule, if it was fun, they sure as heck could do it themselves. And ain't that the truth? The only reason you and I have a job is because they don't think it's very much fun, and they have no idea how to do it. So that's the only reason we have a job. At the end of the day, what we're doing is making people look good. Seriously. Isn't that the only reason we have a job? We can't make people look good, they're going to hire somebody. So to me, it's all about this, and it's that simple, you know, what we're doing.